today. Surveys are corroborating what many who are on this call know from their own experience and their work with community members. And that is that COVID-19 is taking a toll, not only on health, but is causing serious hardship in many respects. Since March 2020, Propel has surveyed its FreshEBT app SNAP customers on a monthly basis to gain insights into their experience during COVID-19. We're pleased today to have Stacy Taylor, Propel's Head of Partnerships and Policy, and Julieta Cuellar, Propel's Policy Research and Communications Manager, here with us today to share the top line findings from the most recent survey, those findings from February 2021. Please do use the Q&A box to submit questions or comments. Stacy, I'm going to turn it to you. And again, thank you to you and Julieta for being with us.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ellen. I just want to launch right into the background on the survey and who we are, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague Julieta to dive into the February results and dig into your questions. On the next slide, you can see an image here of a tool that we have available to SNAP households across the country. Over 4 million households have downloaded and use FreshEBT on a regular basis to check and manage SNAP and EBT benefits, and to connect with other resources to improve financial health and make it through the month. The name of our company is Propel, and we work to build modern, respectful, effective technology to help Americans with limited income navigate the social safety net and connect with resources. And since the pandemic hit last year, we have been distributing a monthly survey. If you go to the next slide, you can see here that the survey appears as an option within FreshEBT. So households open up FreshEBT and they see this invitation to take a survey. It is a long survey, usually about 10 minutes. And we see really high response rates. We're gathering between 4,000 and 6,000 responses every month, and that's what we use as the basis for the webinar today. We've been distributing a version of this survey since last March, so we're starting to be able to chat about those trends, observe them, and share them with you as well. And we do this because we think it's really important to have the opportunity to pass the mic to households who are experiencing programs firsthand to inform and influence how policies are written in the future, how programs are implemented, and what future conversation is about. So with that, I will turn it over to Julieta to go through the results from the February survey. I'll also note that these are available on our website, and we'll share that link at the end of the webinar.
Thank you, Stacy. So my name is Julieta, as was mentioned earlier, and I'm going to share some of these February survey results with you. So first of all, if you were at last month's webinar when we looked at what we saw in January, very few people had received the second stimulus, about 30%. So that number has now jumped up, but we are still seeing fewer Black and Latinx households actually receiving that payment. We do have good news in the sense that food insecurity measures that we ask month after month are still dropping from having reached a peak in December. And for the first time, we're seeing some gains in some of the employment questions that we ask, but they are inequitably distributed across different racial and ethnic groups. And finally, we're kind of seeing a mixed message with housing instability. The questions that we ask for housing instability, those measures have increased, but there's also more people than ever saying that they're able to pay their February rent on time. So next slide, please. So diving into the second stimulus payment, which was signed into law at the end of December and really started to go out right at the end of the year and mostly in January, we now are hearing that about 68% of respondents to our survey have received that payment. But the breakdown racially shows that it's reaching more of white respondents than Black and Latinx. And this is something that we suspected, but now we've looked into in a little more depth that some of this disparity is coming from how households are set up to receive that second stimulus payment. And as you can see here, there is a disparity in terms of who's getting the stimulus payment through a direct deposit versus who's getting it in the mail, which takes longer. And, you know, last month we saw that I think maybe 30% of people overall said they had received a second stimulus payment. It's jumped up a lot. It doesn't seem like, you know, it seems like most people have gotten the payment, but what we know is that our user base and families in general who get SNAP needed the money yesterday. And every extra day, every extra week, every extra month that they have to wait has a huge impact on them. Next slide, please. The other thing that I wanted to point out today is that the stimulus check doesn't just help an individual receiving it, who has probably got into a fair bit of debt over the many months that they weren't receiving help, but it also helps, you know, a whole community beyond the individual recipient. Here are just a handful of respondents in their own words telling us about how they helped others with what they got. I'll let you read these. And on the next slide, there are even more examples of people telling us how they use their stimulus check to help themselves and help others. You know, every month we ask people for the last several months, how have you helped others or how have you been helped by others? And this is where these stories come out. And I'll let you read these. Yeah, the generosity is very humbling. And I think that we'll see a few more. I mean, it comes across in every question that we ask on every topic, how people come together to support one another. But unfortunately, it's a group, it's a network that's already so under-resourced, and truly it's sort of a social network coming together when the social safety net does not. Next slide, please. So moving into food insecurity measures. So, you know, we ask these questions every month in the past 30 days. Have you skipped meals? Have you eaten less? Have you visited a food pantry? Have you relied on family or friends for meals? And these measures dropped a little bit in January from reaching a peak in December, and now we're seeing them drop even more. You know, we've seen this in the past when different programs and relief start to come through. I suspect that this is a result of the stimulus payments reaching our users, and perhaps also people filing their taxes and getting tax refunds or, you know, tax credits. This is something interesting that we see also that could explain this drop, is that, you know, we ask people if they've received extra SNAP benefits in the past month. Frankly, there's a lot of confusion. You know, a good portion, I think in February, maybe like 17% of people said that they didn't know if they had gotten extra SNAP or not. But this is definitely the highest number we've seen, and this could explain why food insecurity measures have continued to decrease. As you likely know, a 15% boost was passed or approved recently, so it's perhaps this that's reaching families now. Another great sign is that we also ask people, do they have everything they need in their homes? So not just food, but also cleaning supplies, other household items, and people saying that they have everything they need has reached a new high, which is of 10%, still pretty low, but a good sign. Next slide, please. So we asked people about employment, and we have since the beginning, and really since September, we've seen the first gains in employment, which, you know, here are some numbers for you. In the past 30 days, We ask, have you lost or quit a job? That's dropped down to 8%. Have you had hours reduced? That's also dropped down by 3 percentage points. And, we also ask people if their work is totally paused. That seems to have dropped a little bit as well. So good news on the surface level. Unfortunately, when we disaggregate that data, we see disparities across race and gender. So Black and Latinx workers are more likely to describe their current employment status as working, not working, but looking for work. Black, Latinx, Asian, and female workers are also more likely to have had their hours cut in the last 30 days. And Latinx workers are almost twice as likely to have lost or quit a job in the past 30 days. Next slide, please. So finally, moving on to housing instability, we ask this in the form of, do you currently live in a house, apartment, or other stable housing? The portion of respondents who said no went up to 8.6% from a kind of a steady percentage point below that from November to January, which is a little troubling. I can also tell you I'm analyzing our survey from March, and this is continuing to go up. But on the other hand, more people are saying that they were able to pay February rent on time. 40% said that, up from 37% in January. However, those that say that they're just not paying that month's rent at all has remained steady at about 5% of respondents. Next slide. This is a story that one of our users shared, and I think it's an interesting one because it shows, I think as you all know, work and housing and health all are intertwining very much at this moment. And in this particular, for this particular person, she's sharing how being sick with COVID and trying to, having to spend money to try to recover from that has taken away her ability to pay her rent and is stuck in sort of a really difficult and frustrating situation where it feels like you're choosing between your life, essentially, your wellness, and the ability to have a place to live. And also another trend that we've seen for many months throughout the pandemic, which is the pressure and difficulty of owing money to others, having to rely on others for help. Next slide, please. Here's just a few more quotes from users on housing insecurity, on the many people that we hear from every month that are living in hotels or motels. Also showing you a bit the degree to which some people are really many months behind in paying rent. And this is really just a fraction. It's something that we see just across the board. A lot of anxiety about being able to stay in housing and struggling to pay rent. And in the next slide, which is my last one, I just wanted to share a little bit some of the hearing from respondents in their own words, how much the pandemic and the economic fallout that we're seeing from it has taken a toll on their mental health. We are coming on, we've now reached, I guess, a year of the pandemic, of lockdown, of people being out of work. And it's a very long time to be living with this degree of uncertainty, anxiety, and it comes across in people's words, as you can see here. And if you can move on to the next slide for me, this is what Stacy mentioned at the beginning, that we share key findings from every month's survey on our website at joinpropel.com. FreshEBT.gov/COVID-19, and the February results that I shared with you just now are online at this moment, and you can see them there as well. So you can move to the next slide. Thank you. And we're happy to take your questions.
So Julieta, thank you so much to you and Stacy for that presentation and for the continuing work that Propel is doing, trying to be an additional mechanism for gauging what's going on, and in particular, what trends might be either promising or worrisome in what they're telling us about policy. I would say that one of the things I take away from this is some hope that some of these payments are in fact moving the needle, but they're moving it by inches. And if I may have the degree wrong, but it does seem like it's incremental and it's really, really small. One of the things that the Bureau of Labor Statistics does every month when they put out the national unemployment rate is to report on the monthly variation, which of course is very important. What are we seeing direction wise? But they always remind us what the pre-COVID February 2020 levels of unemployment were, and we're so far away from that. And I think your survey is continuing to point out to us that even with some differences getting made, that people are in such dire circumstances, and they've been often without the assistance they needed for very long periods of time, certainly many of them without work or without earnings that they're used to. But also, even now, you're finding that some people's economic dislocation or work issues are recent, that they aren't just all from some period in the past. And so I think it does underscore just how far we have to go in getting everybody the aid that will move the needle much more significantly and over the long haul. It's great that 1 out of 10 of the respondents is saying they have what they need. That's 90% that are left that do not have what they need. And my guess is that those 1 out of 10 who are saying they have what they need, they're talking about very basic. So they're, as you say, under-resourced. And when they get just a little bit more and they're closer to being resourced, then they can say that. But that's still a very, very hard hit group of folks. And I was also struck by your finding that it was noticeable in February that the SNAP benefits were extra. And I hear you in terms of the difficulties of knowing from month to month as benefits go into accounts on cards, that households may not always know what their baseline would have been, but for the emergency assistance payments that went to all but the maximum benefit households, and what started back in March. And of course, as pandemic and EBT has come in, those go onto cards and into SNAP accounts and may look like extra SNAP benefits or not. But this 15% boost is the first time that we've seen anybody who was at the maximum benefit level during COVID start to get a boost of any kind. And so it is reassuring that maybe that's one of the reasons that they noticed that. And so that's an interesting finding, I think, for those of us who have been trying to do advocacy around the 15% boost. Do you have any perspectives on why it is that that people are saying that that they are doing better? I mean, you do point to the fact it could be the stimulus checks as well. You're seeing a little bit lowering of the food insecurity findings. You're finding a little bit better ability to afford housing, but still a lot of instability. Are you finding those surprising, or what are your takeaways on that, Julieta?
I don't think it's it's that surprising. I think that the relief that came at the end of the year and the relief that's now coming once again, kind of in quick succession, would suggest that you know, people are doing better. I mean, frankly, things had just gotten so bad over the fall, you know, reaching a peak across the many questions that we asked people about food insecurity, housing insecurity, financial precarity, that I hoped that it would come down from there, and it's starting to. And I think that, as many of you know on the call, surely, that this is the time of year in general, especially just February, March, April, where families tend to be doing better because they're getting their tax refunds. So that would be my suspicion. I don't know if Stacy has anything to add to that.
No, not really. Just that we see consistently since we've started these surveys last March, we see positive impacts when government benefits and interventions reach families. And we see disparities in which families have access first. But we do see a bump with each of the COVID relief bills. And as the policies and programs have been implemented, it makes a difference.
Right. And I could share also, just it wasn't in the deck, but that when we compared food insecurity measures for all survey respondents, and I believe this is from September to February, versus those who received PBT or extra SNAP, you know, there's a difference in terms of skipping meals. You know, 35% would be overall, 29% for those who got these extra benefits, eating less, 44% versus 40%. Visiting a food pantry really doesn't drop very much, 32 versus 31, and relying on family or friends for meals, 25% versus 21%. So it does make a difference, and we see that in the numbers.
Right.
However, people are still struggling.
A number of the folks who call in for this particular update every month are from the emergency feeding side of the world, and I wondered, perhaps we'll talk to them about the visits to the food pantries. I suppose it could be that people are still going to a food pantry, but maybe they don't need to go as often in the month, or maybe they don't need to pick up as much during the month. It's not as if we're seeing our emergency food assistance folks tell us that demand is so down that it's not an issue. But I think it would be interesting on our emergency food assistance side to see if there's anything related where perhaps perhaps that's the case. And I see we have a comment from Andrew Chain from the California Association of Food Banks, and he does report stabilization at 2 times the pre-COVID levels, but maybe starting to ebb, but not quite yet. So if I'm interpreting Andrew correctly, we're still seeing, compared to pre-COVID, very, very problematic demand in terms of what people are needing, and that maybe it's starting to ebb, but it's not being felt there yet. And unfortunately, I'm getting an emphatic yes exclamation point from Andrew. So that's still something we're going to be watching, and I appreciate Andrew sharing that in real time, because again, your survey informs us, but it also informs us, I think, what kinds of things we could be asking others about, what kinds of things we should talk to more people who are receiving SNAP about, what should we be talking to other parts of the food system about, who should we be talking to in the housing arena, who is involved with the stimulus payments and how they're provided, that might be thoughtful about how to better address some of the racial disparities that you're identifying. So we don't always expect Propel to have every answer, but we do think you give us quite a bit to think about in terms of what is the direction, is policy making a difference, where is it making the difference, but also where else do we need to go to fill out the picture. Yours is just one survey out of a number, but we think it's an important piece of the puzzle as we try to figure out, what is that landscape and what would be the smart what are the smartest things we can do in terms of policy that will meet people's needs, where they are, how they are, and as diverse as the population is that needs to be made sure that they're taken care of and not left, as you say, undersourced, under-resourced, and filling gaps with on a social network basis from an under-resourced network. That's not
Right.
that's not a great model. It's certainly a testament to human generosity, and as you say, quite humbling. But it should really
Yeah.
humble. It should humble all of us and American society and our government that that's not something that they should have to step up to do. That's something that society has a greater responsibility to make sure is not falling onto that just good side of people.
Another thing to just add, you know, we're seeing maybe a drop in food insecurity as a result of this infusion of money and benefits to households. But we also ask people every month, have you had to borrow or use credit to cover your expenses in the last 30 days? And that's pretty much over 50% every month say that they do. That's a lot of debt that people need to climb out of, you know, and that's separate from how we ask people, you know, if they've paid their rent or if they're paying it late, potentially incurring late fees. So immediate needs of eating maybe are getting met, but there's this other source that's sucking resources out of family and that they're going to be trying to come out of for quite a long time.
Well, yeah, again, thank you so much for these findings. We hope that as the months go by, that the findings will continue to provide some positive pointers. We're hoping that some of the government relief that has kicked in and will be kicking in more and longer due to the American Rescue Plan that just was enacted do start moving the needle a bit more. But on the policy side, so many of us have argued that those, in many ways, while they're very large scale interventions, they still are down payments and only are going to get us so far. So as you continue to do these, we will look for more lessons learned. I would invite people to let us know or let you know what questions they think maybe should be raised in coming months that might be new based on things they're seeing or the way that they're understanding policy is coming down the pipeline, and see whether or not there's some insights. But you've been great in terms of you, Propel, Stacy, in terms of sharing your insights, being willing to see this tool be something that can inform us all. So again, thank you so much for this. And with that, unless you have a last word, Julieta or Stacy, I'm going to turn it to Nomi.
Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us. As a reminder, if you need a recording of this webinar, feel free to message me, nsmall@frac.org, and reach out to me or Stacy if you have any follow-up questions. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.